everyone, welcome to Boho Bookworm and welcome to my December wrap-up. So throughout December I was on a race against time to try and catch up with my Goodreads TBR, so I read 6 books, which is quite a substantial amount for me considering that I haven't had the best of reading years. I had a goal to read 80 books, I didn't get there, I finished the year on 51, so at least I hit 50. The first book that I finished throughout December was Confessions of a Shopaholic by Sophie Kinsella, which is an old series. I just felt like something light-hearted, fluffy, fun, and it is a series that I think I read the first book many years ago, and I had always kind of wanted to continue and see what happened with the main character, but I wanted to go back and refresh my memory before I did. For the most part, I do find Sophie Kinsella's books very overdramatic, but they are always, light-hearted and entertaining, and that's exactly what I needed. This is a book about Becky. She's a financial reporter for Successful Savings, and she's got a pretty glamorous lifestyle, one that she can't really afford. All of her credit cards are maxed out, and she's got a lot of people chasing her for money. But still, despite all this, she can't stop. Shopping is her kryptonite. I feel like Sophie Kinsella modelled Becky and the whole Confessions of a Shopaholic series off of Sex and the City. Becky is the British Carrie Bradshaw. Overall, it's a really difficult book for me to talk about because personally I've never owed anyone money. I've never had debt, and so reading a book about someone that has gotten themselves into such a mess, I can't understand it. I don't believe it. It doesn't seem possible to me. It was just mind-blowing. I mean, overall for me, shopping is a luxury. It's one that I don't do very often. I mean, yeah, sometimes I go out and I'll buy myself a book or a new thing of mascara or, occasionally a little top from probably Sainsbury's, which is like £10. Not to the extent that Becky does. She really just wants all of the brands, all of the fashion, and so do I. I would love to buy that Michael Kors dress that I was dreaming of last year, but I don't have £300 to splash on it, and I'm not going to take out a credit card for that. As much as I want it, I don't want it that much. Becky is so bad that she will go out and buy stuff in March, justifying it by saying that they're early Christmas presents. Just like the most random shit that you would never give as a Christmas present, surely. I'm just like, she was spending money for the sake of spending money, and I couldn't. It frustrated me. It became evidently clear to me that Becky has a very real problem with shopping and spending money. It could easily be likened to an alcoholic in a pub, and to me that's not really fun to read about. Someone with a clear addiction, I don't like reading that. People who are addicts, they are very selfish and self-obsessed people, and they make horrible decisions and hurt people around them, and that's how I saw Becky's character, and it made the book not entertaining and not fun. It made it really unenjoyable for me. I'll admit, yes, I enjoyed the fashion element to the book because I do love fashion myself, but just no, I can't support this book. I want to continue the series. A part of me still does, to see if she learns her lesson, but considering there's like a bunch of other books in the series, I'm not so sure. I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. Then I read When She Returned by Lucinda. Now, I have read one other Lucinda book in the past, which was The Perfect Child. It was the perfect book. It was sensational. One of the best books I've ever read. If you are after a book about a creepy child, get a copy of that book. I loved it. So obviously I held really high hopes when I picked up another one of her books, and it sounded really good. It's the story of a mother, Kate Bennett, and she just disappears one day from this parking lot, this shopping centre car parking lot, and leaves behind her husband and her young daughter. But then many years later, like 11 years later or something, she just randomly shows up on the side of the street clutching this baby, screaming for help. This book on Goodreads has over 42,000 reviews, and the majority of them are 4 out of 5s. Mine isn't. I just didn't like this book. I'd never read a book based on cults before. It's something I'd always wanted to dip my feet into. Cult books seem to be, you know, a bit of a thing among the Booktube community. A lot of people seem to really, really enjoy them. I'd never read one, so I was interested to see what I kind of thought of that niche. But unfortunately, I just found it way, way too religious for my liking. It was also just agonisingly slow-paced, with just so much filler that wasn't necessary. There was such this like flip-flop between past and present tense that I lost my interest, and my focus was just gone with it. I was not enjoying it. With a premise like this book, it just promises an unforgettable read, but unfortunately it did not live up to that expectation. It fell very, very short for me, so again, 2 out of 5 stars. The third book I read throughout December was All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers, who hosts the true crime podcast Crime Junkie. So as a lover of true crime and podcasts, I was super excited to get my hands on this book. So this is a book about Margot Davies. She's this big city journalist who has always been haunted by the murder of her 6-year-old neighbour. 20 years ago, January Jacobs was murdered, and Margot's just never been able to forget it. So in present day, Margot has to return to her hometown to care for her sick uncle, and there's this recent case in the news about this girl called Natalie, and her disappearance has a lot of similarities to that of January Jacobs, which kind of makes Margot a bit more interested in this case. For a debut novel, All Good People Here is good if you are after a retelling of the John Benet Ramsey case. It's evident from her own podcast that the author, Ashley Flowers, she's got incredible storytelling abilities, and that's very clear in her book as well. The book does start out really strong, but as with most crime books, the pace slowed down after the beginning, and just it didn't ramp up, and I found it utterly boring. It did have positives. It was very atmospheric, it was packed with tension, but so slow. I mean, the dragginess of this book just killed me. I ended up losing my interest with it and only really half paying attention, and I thought that was why I was wondering where the hell the ending of this book was when I'd finished the last page. But then I started reading other people's Goodreads reviews, and a lot of people are saying the same thing, that the book just didn't have an ending. So at least I'm not alone there. Overall, this is just a pretty mundane, run-of-the-mill crime books. There was nothing captivating or overly special about it. So unfortunately, Ashley Flowers, this got a 2 out of 5 stars from me. To carry on a pretty shitty reading month, I read The Bright Side of Disaster by Katherine Center. Spoiler alert, it's another 2 out of 5 stars. Again, the premise of this book sounded so good. It's about this girl called Jenny who starts her family a little bit early with her fiance Dean. It had that like Marion Keyes kind of feel to it, where when Jenny is in labour, her fiance Dean just kind of abandons her. I really wanted to love this book and kind of watch Jenny's growth into parenthood alone. The book promised to be really feel good and just give me all the feels, but it didn't. The only feels that this book gave me was just anger and frustration. To say that I hated Dean as a character is an understatement. Like, I understand creating a character that you're meant to loathe in a book, but wow. Dean became tedious to read about. It was awful. It wasn't like Draco Malfoy in Harry Potter. It was bad. It was painful to read about. It left dark shadow hanging over me every time I picked this book up. The whole Dean concept kind of stole the show from, what I was hoping to get from the book, which was all about motherhood. In my head and from the premise, I'd just assumed that this book was going to be all on, pregnancy and birth and how to be a parent, discovering how to be in charge and responsible for this tiny little human that you just brought into the world with, no, people just like, you push it out and then you're just expected to go home with it and know what to do. And I think that's such a bizarre and crazy thing. So I wanted to read about that and that experience of, first time parenthood. But that's not what I got at all. The more I think about it, I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars, but I actually just want to knock it down to 1 out of 5 stars. I just really didn't enjoy it. Then I read The Viscount That Loved Me by Julia Quinn, which is the second book in the Bridgerton series. So book 2 follows Anthony's story as he decides to get married. He's already decided, who he's going to marry, but unfortunately he is getting haunted by erotic dreams and visuals and just the essence of the girl that he wants to marry's sister. Yay. The book follows him as he battles this fear of an early death. It's a rational fear brought on by the loss of his father from a bee sting many years ago. The sister is this girl called Kate, and I loved her so much more than Daphne in the first book. She was just such a strong character to read about. She's got this dark humour, a strong wit, she's courageous, and a great main character. So far, having read the first 2 books in the series, I'd say that the books are, they're enjoyable, they're light-hearted, they're not particularly well written, but they're still okay. They are. Don't go into them expecting the most incredible, life-changing books to win writing awards, but they're just fun and easy to soak up and kind of get lost in. They're steamy historical romances, but they're not without their problems. For instance, I know back in the 1800s, men just assumed that they were entitled to a shag whenever they wanted, particularly from their marital partner. But my God, the sexism in this book drove me wild. From demanding sex to sulking when denied to crushing fingers, like tiny little delicate female fingers, just for the joy of it. There was a lot about this book that made me want to hurl it across the room, just for the stupid men in it. Anthony included. Not my Anthony, the other Anthony. There's also one part of Julia Quinn's writing that really ruffles my feathers, and that is her dialogue. So I just don't get it when her characters wake up from a slumber, or they're drunk, or trying to be semi-coherent. The way that she structures their words is onto the page, and I'm just like, it's cringy. You don't actually speak like that when you're drunk. No one that I know speaks like that. So to just hear someone or read about someone's dialogue in that way, it makes me blush for her as an author. Will I continue with the series? Yes, I will. Am I expecting it to be, the next Jane Austen? No, I'm not, but I like it, so I'm going to just enjoy it when I don't need something completely life-changing. For Bridgerton Book 2, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the last book I read throughout December is If You're Reading This by KIERSTEN, which is about this woman whose husband dies on the day of their wedding. So then a year later, she goes on this trip with all of her male friends, and she receives a bunch of letters from him, which kind of gave me a bit of like P.S. I Love You vibes, but it was just rubbish. I normally really like KIERSTEN, and because I'd read so many really rubbish books throughout the last half of the year, I picked up a KIERSTEN book so that I could end the year on a high on, a 5 out of 5 star read. I was sure of it. The premise sounded good. Everything seemed to be promising, but unfortunately I gave this one 2 out of 5 as well. There's really nothing more to say other than I couldn't concentrate with it. There is probably something wrong with my brain right now because I can't seem to just focus on a book. But at the same time, I started this book again and again and again and again, and the same problem just kept happening. I looked at other people's reviews. They also don't seem as impressed with this one as her other books that I've enjoyed. So at least I know that I'm not alone here. It was the most forgettable, boring story that just seemed quite unbelievable and bland. There's not really more to say. Unfortunately, December was a particularly rough reading month for me, and let's just hope that 2023 is better. I've got a much smaller goal of just 30 books, not 80, and I haven't finished one. It is today as I film this. It's the weekend, the first weekend of January. Still recovering from a cold, but I am definitely going to be reading as much as I can. I am halfway through, hold on, I'm currently halfway through The Snow Child, which is my book club pick of the month, and it's very much not a book that I would normally pick up if, you know, if I was in a bookshop. Nothing would have compelled me to pick this up. It's beautifully written, it's sad, it's devastating. It's set in 1920s Alaska, and it's this older couple, Mabel and Jack, and many years ago they had a stillborn baby, so they kind of went to live quite isolated in Alaska, where they live mainly off the earth, and he's shot a moose that they've got to survive off of winter and throughout winter and stuff. It's a very hard life, but they create this snow girl, this snow like man thing in the snow one night, and it turns into this real little girl. But it's almost like a curse, because as soon as winter ends, the snow girl disappears, and then it follows them through that year without her, I think. That's kind of where I am in the book now. The girl's now disappeared, and she had this little fox with her and stuff, that used to kind of follow her around, and they still see the fox, but the little girl's gone, and the Mabel, the wife, is really hoping that the following winter she'll return, but Jack's trying to prepare her for not seeing this little girl again. So yeah, very different. It's got that kind of like magical realism element to it, that is not normally something I would enjoy or particularly pick up. It's nice to read something so out of my comfort zone, but I am looking forward to this year getting some good thrillers in, and just some of those books that have been on my TBR for ages that I really want to read before a couple of big things happen. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon.